Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us here at NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida for today's discussion on Kennedy and the future of human spaceflight now that the space shuttles are taking their places in locations across the country. Joining us for the discussion today are Bob Cabana, Director of Kennedy Space Center, Bill Hill, Assistant Deputy Associate Administrator for Exploration Systems Development, and Ed Mango, NASA's Commercial Crew Program Manager. Okay, I'll turn it over to Mr. Cabana.
Thanks, Candria. Hey, it's a real pleasure to be here today to talk about KSC's future. Tomorrow we got a big event going on. We're going to move Atlantis out of the VAB on its little over 9-mile journey to its new facility at our visitor center, and that is going to really be special. We've got a number of events planned throughout the day, but it finally brings finality to our shuttle program. Phenomenal 30-year history in that program, and it accomplished a great deal. But we have not been standing still for the last year. And I think with the end of the shuttle program now being marked with Atlantis moving it to its new facility, we have been focused on the future for more than a year. We've gotten commercial cargo to the International Space Station, and we have focused on what it takes to explore beyond our home planet once again and prepare these facilities to truly be that multi-user spaceport of the future, what was once science fiction, making it reality for both commercial crew and cargo and government crew and cargo to low Earth orbit and beyond. So I think it'll be fun this afternoon to talk a little bit about that, talk about where we're going and the great strides that we've made in this last year. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Bill Hill, and he can talk a little bit about NASA headquarters perspective on all of this.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate being here this afternoon. We had a really good EVA this morning. Just to let you know that the station is still up and running. We're doing 35 hours plus research a week, which is our gold standard for doing research. So things are going really well on station. We're back up to crew of 6. We occasionally go to 3, but we're planning, obviously to keep the station going for another 8 years or so, and hopefully well beyond that. We'll see how we do there. We're working the exploration systems development programs, ground systems development and operations down here, making great progress in preparing this facility to launch the exploration or launch the Space Launch System in Orion, which we're shooting for in December of 2017. That's our target launch. We're going to do a flight test of Orion in 2014 off of LC-41 over here on a Delta 4 Heavy. We're going to test out the heat shield there, and we're making progress there. In the ONC, that vehicle is being assembled today. We should be proof pressure testing the command module sometime this week if we haven't done it already. So we're making a lot of progress there, and we're getting ready to go into the preliminary design review for the SLS later this year and have that complete by the end of the calendar year. We're doing other things. Ed's going to talk about commercial crew and cargo. We're making great strides there and bringing those partners on board. We also have our launch services who are planning the launch of science payloads and spacecraft. So we're really doing well. My biggest message is human space flight is not dead with rolling Atlantis to the visitor center. We're doing a lot of things. We're planning for the future. We're flying every day up on station and making a lot of good progress there. And with that, I'll turn it over to Ed.
Thanks. I'm glad that the station is doing well. We are going to build, with our partners in industry, we're going to build a capability to get that International Space Station. And hopefully we'll do that in the next couple years. The commercial crew program is between here and JSC, and it's really our NASA efforts in order to develop a U.S. capability that's safe, reliable, and cost-effective for access to low Earth orbit. And in doing so, we really are creating 2 capabilities. One is a public purpose in which we are trying to help industry create a capability so that it can go anywhere in low Earth orbit and really create business in low Earth orbit for the entire planet to use that is led by the United States. And the second is a NASA purpose. We need to come visit the space station as often as possible, bring our scientists and our astronauts and our engineers up to the space station and get them home safely. And so that's the second part of our overall purpose of the Commercial Crew Program. As you know, we awarded ICAP, we call it CC ICAP, back in August. All three partners we have in ICAP are doing outstanding. They're meeting their milestones really on time. This past week, there isn't anything slow about Commercial Crew. This past week, we really had 3 milestones with each of the partners, so my team was spread out throughout the country. And I would have to say that if there's a program that is working all corners of the nation, it's Commercial Crew right now. We had a review in SpaceX out in LA just a few days ago, which was their requirements review for their integrated system. An outstanding review, and we're following on with a number of meetings with the engineers both this week and over the next couple of weeks. Sierra Nevada out in Colorado also had their review on their baseline design for their integrated system, not just their Dream Chaser, but also how they plan to use that with their Atlas V vehicle. Outstanding effort there, a 3-day review that went into great details about how they're moving forward with their design. And Boeing had a production design review not too long ago, and this week they finished out that review and completed that milestone of how they plan to build their vehicle, the steps it is going to take to build their vehicle, and the steps it's going to take to integrate it with their launch vehicle, which is also an Atlas. Right now, Boeing plans to build that vehicle right here at Kennedy Space Center, and plans to build a couple of those vehicles, not just for the NASA business, but like I said, also for capability to move other folks into low Earth orbit and do other science. So space is moving forward, human spaceflight is moving forward with all those activities. We also have a contract under solicitation today, and we plan to award that in February of next year. And that is really to get into the details of what it takes to fly NASA astronauts on any vehicle that might want to be designed in order to carry crew to the ISS capability. Overall, we plan to start flight testing in the 2014 timeframe. In fact, under ICAP, one of our partners is going to fly 2 launches right from here at the Cape, and another partner is going to fly, Sierra is going to fly a number of test flights out of Edwards Air Force Base as a landing capability to prove their vehicle can land safely. And all that will begin over the next couple of years, and we'll do real flight testing of complete systems in the 2014 to 2016 timeframe, and then hopefully fly crew certified by NASA to fly crew in the middle of 2017. That's our plan, and we are really on track to meet that plan as we go forward. So even with Atlantis now rolling over to its new location, it is certainly not the end of human spaceflight. It is a change in chapter, of which Commercial Crew is just a piece of the overall change the United States is making towards exploration in low Earth orbit and far beyond.
Thank you. The first question is for Bob. Can you tell us a little bit about the changes that have been taking place here at Kennedy to support future launches?
I think the most visible change is here at Launch Complex 39. If you look out at the pads, Pad B is totally different from Pad A. All the shuttle infrastructure is gone. We've been working diligently to bring it up to speed to support a new clean pad concept with a mobile launcher that is specific to a rocket, where you could have multiple mobile launchers for different rockets rolling out there. Now that's a long ways down the road, but right now we're making it suitable for the Space Launch System. And I've promised Mr. Hill here and Bill Gerstenmaier that KSC will not be the reason that we don't launch on time in 2017. We'll have a quality product on time and within budget, and we've made huge progress towards that. Out there at the pad, there's a state-of-the-art lightning protection system, refurbished propellant distribution systems, digital controls at the pad, fiber optics, going back to a newly refurbished firing control room, Firing Control Room 1, totally updated, and it can be modified again to support multiple customers much more efficiently. And I think of all the things, you know, we've seen this transition coming. Since the day I got here 4 years ago, we have been focused on what do we need to do to take care of the workforce as best we can and to put NASA and our nation in the best position to support the future and future exploration. I think it's right to turn low Earth orbit over to commercial operations. Ed and his team are doing a fantastic job working through the Space Act agreement process and eventually to a contract to get someone that can fly us to the space station, and then we are focusing on exploring beyond our home planet. And it really is hard. It's a huge challenge when you consider what's required to make that happen. But the team has made tremendous progress for it. And I mean, we've turned the corner. We are focused on the future and what it takes to make that happen. And to really modify KSC, you know, more than just for heavy lift, but to make it support multiple users, both commercial and government. So we've made great progress. I got to back up to Atlantis. Just one quick thing. I think it's, you know, we've all followed where the shuttles have gone. I mean, it's gotten tremendous public interest. And if you look at each one of them, I mean, each is being displayed in a unique way, and I think it's really cool. You got Discovery that looks like it just rolled in to the hangar after coming off the runway, and Endeavour in its final configuration is going to look like it's ready to launch on a stack with a launch structure around it. But Atlantis, and I'm partial, I think it's going to be the coolest here at KSC. It's actually going to be mounted on a pedestal with the payload bay doors open, so it looks like it's actually flying in space. And I want to commend the team here at KSC and our contractor civil service team in transition on the shuttles. The care which they have shown those orbiters, even in transition, preparing them for the millions of people that are going to see them. It was just like they were getting them ready to go fly in space. Great care, great concern, doing the outstanding job that they do right up until the very end. And, you know, even though we're not flying them anymore, they're going to continue to tell their story. There are millions of people that are going to be able to share in what we have accomplished and see them up close and personal. I think that's really cool.
That is great. And with after 30 years of shuttle experience, and with Kennedy being ready for multi-center or multi-users, Bill, can you tell us a little bit about how Commercial Crew, Orion, and SLS kind of fit in the bigger, larger NASA exploration picture?
Well, we're looking at one of the activities we have under Ground Systems Development and Operations is an activity called 21st Century Launch Complex Initiative. And we're applying those funds and those activities to try to make sure that we can have a multi-use facility here so we can do other commercial entities, or even the Air Force is talking about coming here to do some launching. Strata Launcher is looking at a potential of coming here. So we're looking at a myriad of different launch capabilities, launch processing capabilities, and this will be the focal point, I think, for the distant future for human spaceflight, both commercial and government sponsored or NASA sponsored.
Absolutely. I mean, real estate just says this is the place to come. I mean, we've got the real estate and we have the facilities and the technical expertise. It makes KSC a natural choice. Along those lines, on 21st Launch Century, we're also working with the Air Force in the range. In the last 2 years, we've spent $10 million a year helping to improve the range.
That's great. So with the programs here, we've got SLS and Orion that would obviously launch from Kennedy. Ed, could you tell us a little bit about what the launch services from commercial providers would be?
Yeah, oh yes. It's very good for the Space Coast. All three of our providers today are going to fly right here from the Space Coast. Either using today, if these three partners continue, either using a Falcon 9 rocket out of LC-40 or an Atlas V today out of LC-41, and that's really for the early portion of the program. As time goes on, there might be other launch vehicles that want to get into the mix to try to launch Crew as well, and we'll work that with our partnerships. So the good news is all three will be launching from here. I believe that, like I said, if Boeing continues all the way through, they're going to end up building their vehicles here. And I believe that both Sierra and SpaceX will be doing significant work here, just like they do with the cargo version of Dragon. There's a lot of experiments that could put together and get put in the Dragon vehicle before it flies. All that is done here, and then of course the vehicle is getting ready for launch and launched out of here too. So the launch business for commercial and for human spaceflight will be quite active over the next couple of years. It won't be as routine every 3 or 4 months as shuttle, but it'll be different. We'll have cargo missions flying every once in a while now out of LC-40. With time, we're going to have a test flight of Orion flying off of Delta, and we'll have some test flights in 2014 for SpaceX for Commercial Crew program. And then with time, we'll be doing all kinds of flights in the 14, 15, and 16 time frame as test flights for Commercial Crew. So it's going to be an exciting time, and we're at the right now in the middle of that design phase in 2012. And 2 years from now, we're going to be flying portions of those vehicles. It'll be a great opportunity.
Yeah, Ed, you mentioned Boeing coming here, and you know, I would be remiss if I didn't mention the outstanding partnership that we have with the state of Florida through Space Florida and the agreements that we put in place to get OPF Bay 3 turned over to Space Florida so that they made it available for Boeing to utilize that facility. And we're continuing to work with Space Florida on other facilities, hopefully attracting more work here into the excess capacity that we have. It only makes sense that, you know, if we have something that we have absolutely no use for in the space launch system, our exploration beyond Earth program, you know, we ought to be able to find a way to bring other work into those facilities. And we've got a number of agreements in work and more coming.
I think this whole industry government partnership is a new way of doing business, not only with the state, but also even in Commercial Crew. All these partners are bringing their own funds to the table. They're bringing their own capabilities to the table from throughout the country to work with NASA, and together we do this. This is not a standard government and then we have a contract and we tell them what to go do. It's very much a partnership. And I think the work that Space Florida is doing here certainly adds help or adds to the overall idea of it's a national partnership in order to go continue to be #1 in space.
And one of the things we're doing as we're building up for support of SLS and Orion, especially in the VAB, is one example where we're putting together platforms that are going to be vertically adjustable. And they're going to have a section in the center where we'll be able to drop in an insert to match up either the SLS or another launch vehicle as those folks come. So we're keeping in mind that we want to be flexible. We're keeping in mind that we want to be a multi-user facility here at Kennedy. So we're doing things the right way, I think, getting away from the vehicle-centric infrastructure that we've had for decades.
And we have taken that into great consideration in all the designs that we've done so far. I mean, the foresight that the Apollo guys had when they built the VAB, the ability to modify it, it transitioned from Apollo to shuttle, and now we're making it an even better transition to the future, ensuring that it is not vehicle-specific, that it accommodates that vehicle, but as well as others. I've been following what's going on in the high bay over there as we progress in High Bay 3, and they said, hey, yeah, we're taking, you know, one of the shuttle platforms out. And you think of a platform as just something you stand on, and you see a picture of it. I mean, it's bigger than a house, and it's, you know, they've lifted it out of there and are moving it out of there. So again, another area where we've made great progress in refurbishing the VAB, and also the mobile transporter. You know, that's being MT2 is being totally redone. It's got new diesel engines, all kinds of great stuff, and we're going to be running a test here in the next couple of weeks. Actually, run it out to the Pad A and pick up the mobile launch platform that's out there and check out all the systems that we've modified on it. And then it'll come back in the barn and we'll replace the bearings on it next. But it's going to be able to handle that new heavy lift rocket. It's going to be a great mobile transporter for years to come.
Sure.
So along with SLS and Orion, we've got a lot of things going on for our partners that we want to come to Kennedy. But along with the partnerships we also have competition. So Ed, could you explain a little bit about the competition in your program and how that benefits the agency?
Sure, absolutely. You know, one of the best things about competition is overall it lowers the price of the service when you're looking for the service at the end. Today we have two partners under cargo, that is Orbital and SpaceX, and they both have different approaches. SpaceX brings cargo to the space station and then will retrieve cargo, and we just saw that very successfully in the last few days. Orbital is just about to fly their first mission in the next couple months, and they will be able to supply additional cargo to space station, and then bring whatever needs to be done in terms of trash and that kind of thing, and bring that back into the atmosphere. This way, station station can remain as efficient as possible. Competition is key, and for Commercial Crew, we had 7 partners under our Commercial Crew 2 development. We now have 3 partners under CC ICAP. I sometimes refer to the team as if you look at what we do or what we all go out and buy from iPads and Nooks and Kindle Fires, that competition is key to what you want to go buy. If you want something a certain size or something made by a certain manufacturer, you go do that. But that competition keeps that price down, and I think that's one reason why there's a new Apple Mini pad or whatever they call it in order to go compete. And I think that's what you get when you have competition. You get all of our partners wanting to meet our requirements, wanting to transport NASA crew. They want to do it for the least amount of cost, and they want to try to meet our requirements. If we had one partner, one contractor, then we would pay whatever that contractor required us to pay, and therefore the price would probably be overall higher. In fact, all of our analysis we've done indicates that it would be about twice the price. We would probably have a lot more discussion about requirements, because if they could not meet a requirement or they had to do design changes to meet a requirement, they would come with a bill, and then we would have to talk about what that cost versus the requirement itself. When you have at least 2, 3, 4 companies all in competition with each other, they want to meet your requirements. Just again, like Airbus and Boeing trying to buy or sell commercial aircraft. They want to meet the customer demand. They want to meet the customer's requirements, and they try to do it the best way they can for the best price. And that's exactly what we have going on with Commercial Crew today.
Excellent. So while the commercial folks focus on getting to the station, NASA will focus on going deeper into space. So Bill, could you tell me a little bit about some of the advancements that you expect on deep space exploration?
Well, we're working right now with capability, and we're working an evolvable system with the Space Launch System, where we're going to start out with a 70 metric ton capability, evolve to about 105, 110 metric ton, and then go to ultimately to 130. What we're finding is there's only a handful of missions that we can conceive that will need the 130 metric ton, and that's primarily going to Mars, which is our ultimate destination. We're looking at destinations now. We're looking at what we might do with the capabilities that we have, and progressing that way. It's a little bit different than, say, an Apollo or even Shuttle, where we had a destination or it's actually more like Shuttle, where we had a capability to do multiple different things in low Earth orbit. Our goal is to do things beyond low Earth orbit, and that's where we're going.
And I think the key there is it's a capability-driven, sustainable architecture that can evolve to what we need it to be. And we're utilizing a lot of the existing hardware and technology that is required to make it successful. I was over at Stennis a couple of weeks ago for an engine test. I actually got to see Blue Origin's fire their rocket engine over there, but went over from some other meetings on some collaboration between the centers, and I saw those 15 SSMEs all packaged up there at the Rocketdyne facility waiting for use on SLS. So I think, you know, that's important too.
Yeah, and that's one thing we're doing with this approach. We're trying to be as affordable as we can because we're in a constrained fiscal environment. We're trying to stay within a budget. So we're using the 15, 16 SSMEs for the first few missions. We're going to throw them all away anyway. After that, we'll evolve into a disposable SSME, basically, where we're looking at new manufacturing techniques that will lower the cost of each of those, since we are going to throw them away. We don't need necessarily the robustness of multiple engine starts with those, because we'll test them once at Stennis, excuse me, and then bring them over here and do the launch. We're looking at now using solid rocket motors like we had planned for Ares 1. They're an evolution from the shuttle solid rocket motors. We're going to use those for the first 2 launches. And we're in the process of taking a look at advanced boosters. And we've got 4 small contracts out there now for the next 30 months to take a look at various aspects, manufacturing capabilities, looking at a LOX RP engine, and looking at other capabilities. So we're trying to be as affordable as we can. We're trying to make technical advancements. In the meantime, and I neglected to talk to this in my opening remarks, but in the meantime, we're using a lot of NASA civil servants to take a look at technology developments, capability developments that aren't necessarily on the critical path for the first 2 missions. And these are advanced exploration systems, and we're developing those around the country at the various centers, some here at Kennedy, some at Johnson, some at Marshall, and other centers. So we're doing that to, utilize the knowledge and capability that NASA has with a very small amount of procurement dollars, do mostly in-house hands-on capability to build that capability and sustain that knowledge base. So we're doing that in parallel with this.
Yeah, one of the great examples is Resolve here at KSC. Our folks that were looking at in-situ resource utilization for lunar missions, building a package to go on a rover in conjunction with Canada to launch to eventually go to the moon and seek out water on the moon and look at the moon, just like we're much smaller than Curiosity, but getting some great hands-on work and doing some neat stuff here at KSC for that.
We had a question in the audience, so right here.
Mark Radimer with Talking Space. I've got a question about the current NASA astronauts for Ed. How are they involved with the commercial crew program participants? What are they providing to that effort? What's their involvement?
Very good question. First of all, the deputy for the program is Brent Jett. Very good astronaut, flew 4 times. And I want crew members, astronauts, to be very much a part of the program, because in the end, they're the ones that are going to have to get in the seat and go fly the thing. And so get them involved earlier helps everybody. From the overall program standpoint, we have a number of crew members that are assigned to the program. They work still through the astronaut office. They're not really assigned to the program, but their tasks are assigned to the program. And so for each of our partners, there's at least a prime astronaut that supports all of our milestones, with usually 1 or 2 backup folks from the astronaut corps that are also with them, and they basically sit and review all the same things that the rest of the engineering team is. Of course, their focus is how does it fit for them? How are the handling characteristics? For example, in the Sierra Nevada vehicle, very interested in how we're going to be able to do handling characteristics on the vehicle itself. Also, how the display is going to work. Most of the astronauts that we have assigned to us have flown. And so they have experience of what it was like in shuttle or from Soyuz, and so now they're taking an expertise in that and helping each of the partners with, you might want to put displays here, you might really want to have these kind of instruments right in front of you, and these other ones can be more on the side and that kind of thing. So they're providing the human interface part of the discussion. As time goes on, we're going to move, as we move into certification of a couple of these vehicles, we're going to end up having a joint team, very much like the military would, in which you have a team of engineers and a team of astronauts, flight crew members, as well as a team from the company who might represent their flight crew and represent their engineering staff, and all put them together to go work through the flight test activities that all got to happen in order to get to final certification. And so as time goes on, I expect that this team will, it's a partnership today, but I expect the lines of that partnership to even get blurrier between whether or not they're wearing a blue suit with the NASA emblem on it or a company emblem on it, very similar to the way that fighters today are developed in the military.
Ed, along those lines, when you talk about astronauts and their involvement, I mean, we always get asked, is this, how are you going to think this is safe? What about their design and how they're doing all this and stuff? And shoot, I know the guys that are working there that are designing it. And when you talk about astronaut involvement, I mean, Sierra Nevada, you got Steve Lindsay, former chief of the astronaut office, great test pilot, Jim Voss, Boeing, you got Fergie working there out at SpaceX, oh shoot, I just went brain dead. Garrett Reisman is out there. I mean, these guys, they're not going to do something or build something. It's kind of a close community. We all kind of know each other, and you're not going to put your friends at risk. You're going to do your very best to build something that that they want to use, know how to use, and is safe to use.
Oh, I would definitely agree, and the same thing with the engineers. Each of our companies are have a very different personality. That is between SpaceX, Sierra Nevada, and Boeing. Very different personalities, but all of them have the same core. They want to build a vehicle that works. They want to build a vehicle that is safe enough for not just a customer, might be NASA someday, but also for their crew to fly. And I think that's extremely important. Like Bob said, you know, when Steve Lindsay or Fergie is told, well, you're the guy who might be flying it, and all the people working around you are from your company, they're going to make sure you're going to have a safe flight. And so I think safety, although we put it in our requirements, is really a culture that each of these companies is embracing. And in the end, they're going to be as safe as they possibly can be. They're all going to take different approaches to get to the same point. But in the end, they all want to be as safe as possible. And meeting our requirements is definitely required. It's mandatory. But in the end, it's a culture that's going to be more important in order to say that, are we safe enough to go fly? And I think all three companies with their crews as well as their engineers are going to go make sure that happens.
Again, with Talking Space, thinking about the astronauts that are going to take these first flights, who will it be? Will it be a company astronaut or a NASA astronaut or a combination?
Let's see, for commercial crew, I'll speak, and Bill can speak for the other missions. I think what I was trying to explain earlier, I think it'll be a mix. I think as we move into our flight test phases of certification, there'll be company astronauts and NASA astronauts working side by side. And when the first vehicle gets ready to go fly and we announce the crew, I think it might end up being a joint crew. Now, that isn't in concrete yet in any regard, but the idea is it's this partnership that's got to go make this happen. Whether we're in a SAA or in a contract, it's still a partnership that says together we're going to go create a U.S. capability. And so that is blue suiters as well as folks from companies that are either ex-astronauts, no longer with the astronaut corps, or have come up through some other system in order to go be an astronaut on the industry side.
Okay. In the audience, please.
James Dean with Florida Today. Mr. Cabana, referencing your successful partnership to date with Space Florida, the state recently asked you and NASA for some property up the north end of the center. What's your opinion of whether that's a good idea?
Yeah, well, we're evaluating that request. I'm drafting a proposal now to help NASA headquarters respond to the Lieutenant Governor's letter, and we are going to take a close look at it and provide a response that I think will be the right answer for this area and for the state and for what we want to go do. So it's under evaluation right now, and we'll see how it all works out. But I mean, definitely the shuttle landing facility portion of that, we have put out an RFI requesting folks to provide us proposals for operating the shuttle landing facility as a commercial spaceport. And we're in the process of evaluating that. So I think that portion of the letter we're handling under an RFI, and Space Florida has responded to that RFI, and I have a team, much like a source evaluation board, evaluating these proposals independently to choose which one is the best, who we would go into negotiations with to take a look at that. But there is commercial interest in operating the SLF as a spaceport as we move forward into the future.
Just to follow up, can you speak at all to this idea of a commercial pad, a state-run commercial pad, and obviously what they proposed is something that's outside your current operational area. Does that fit your concept of a multi-user Kennedy Space Center, or does it indicate that there's a problem that a company that wants to launch in this area does not want to do it in here at 39?
Again, James, there's a lot that has to be looked at before. I wouldn't give you a specific answer to that right now. I mean, this is a combination. Obviously, for commercial launches, the FAA has to certify them safe to launch. For government launches, we work in conjunction with the 45th Space Wing and the range. It all gets into, who owns the airspace and a lot of other things. So there's a number of issues that we have to work through to get to a final answer. And I honestly don't think that the state of Florida expects an immediate answer on what the final, solution is going to be. We're going to take a look at it, and we'll move forward after proper evaluation and come up with the right solution.
Hi, Stephen Clark with Spaceflight Now. First, a question for Bill regarding advanced propulsion development that you're looking at for SLS, particularly the advanced booster. Are you seeing much interest from the Air Force in that, and are there any negotiations, or could you describe them for cost sharing?
Yeah, I'm not sure if I can give you the details, but the last or the fourth package we are in negotiations with, and the Air Force is a partner in that one. And I apologize, I don't remember off the top of my head which technology development that is, but we're in the process of working with the Air Force, working with the industry to come up with one of those booster alternatives.
One more question for Ed. Could you update me on CCDEV 2? Which partners have finished up that round and which are still to go, and when do you expect them to finish?
Okay, well, let's see. For CCDEV 2, the only two that still have anything left to do on CCDEV 2 is Blue Origin out of Seattle. In fact, their actual milestones are now completed. We have to do a review of the data. They did a pusher pad escape test a few weeks ago out at their test site in West Texas. It was an outstanding test. That team has really come together on some technology that we were working with them on a pusher escape motor. They worked with their vendor, who is a very good vendor who can help a number of different companies, and help them put together a system that would work. And that's what we were a part of during CCDEV 2. The actual mission itself was extremely successful. It was showing that you can abort off of basically a pad. In their case, and get high enough to where you can use parachutes to come back down and land safely and softly on the ground. So the Blue Origin work is, the test is behind us. Now we're reviewing data, and we'll close out that partnership with them probably in the next month or two, certainly before the end of the year. The only other one we have left is a Boeing milestone. That is portion of their ground systems design, their preliminary design review for their ground systems. That is their communication systems with the network and how they communicate between their control center and their vehicle and that kind of thing. And what we did there is they had a PDR, or preliminary design review, for the entire system of their spacecraft a number of months ago. Normally the process would be you have that for the spacecraft, and then you have your PDRs for all your other support systems that would be supporting that spacecraft. And so what we did is we split that out because they really weren't ready yet to talk about the ground stuff, because we're just finishing what to do with the flight stuff. Once that got done, then they turned around and started supporting on the ground, and we'll have that milestone with them in a couple weeks. And so they should also be done before the end of the year. All the other partners for CCDEV 2 are pretty much wrapped up except Sierra Nevada. Now, Sierra Nevada, they really took a bold step, and they are building an engineering test article that is right now in work at their plant in Boulder, Colorado. They'll be shipping that to Edwards in the next month or two. And then it'll go through some testing there and begin a free flight test really, I think in January, February of next year. So those are the milestones are left to be done in terms of testing. The only one that really has some big tests left is Sierra Nevada, and we're really looking forward to what they want to go do with their engineering test article, or their Dream Chaser, January, February timeframe.
We have another question in the audience.
Anna Leahy, Lofty Ambitions blog and Chapman Magazine. During the shuttle development, reusability was equated with affordability. Now you're talking about new manufacturing because the expensive robustness required for reuse is no longer necessary. Can you talk a little bit more about that shift in thinking and maybe how the budget shapes some of your decisions or your timelines?
We seem to go through cycles through history of, do we use reusable like shuttle, or do we go with throwaway expendable stuff? Oddly enough, the Russians are looking at a reusable activity. The Air Force is looking at a reusable activity right now, and we're kind of out of phase with them looking at expendable. We're looking at the most affordable way to get the capabilities we need to get beyond low Earth orbit, and that's kind of what we're doing. We've chosen the architecture basically because of the ability to use existing hardware to offset some of the costs in the early years of development. We're in a flatline budget, so we're trying to kind of tamp down the natural development curve that you get. So we're looking at different ways of doing things. We're looking at different ways of doing insight with contractors, data that we're asking for from the contractors. We're asking for a lot less data now. So that's the kind of thing we're doing in affordability aspects.
But Bill, it also comes down to reusable versus expendable. It depends on what your flight rate is too. For example, if you're flying a lot, the solid rocket motors, we're going to initially use 5-segment solid rocket boosters on the SLS system. If you're only launching once a year, once every 2 years, the whole infrastructure that you need to recover those rocket motors and refurbish them is so expensive. It's much less expensive just to utilize the existing casings that we have and not recover them. Right. Plus, you don't have to have the parachute recovery system on it, so you get more mass to orbit, more payload to orbit. So again, it depends on the system. The Orion capsule is designed to be reusable. Portions are refurbishable. So obviously, if you had something that was easily recoverable and could be reusable, that would be less expensive than building new each time. But again, when you build for reusability, there's a lot that goes into the reliability and the increased cost to do that, as opposed to something that you can just use once. And so there are numerous cost trade-offs that have to be made.
Well, I actually had a question. NASA has done a very good job lately of sending robots into space. So why the importance of sending humans as well?
Well, first off, robots are the precursors for humans, and robots are integral to all that we do in space exploration. I mean, we use robots all the time, robotic arms, you name it, and so, having the robots is key. But in the end, I mean, we've still yet to design a robot that can think as well as a human, that can adapt as well, that responds as well. And truthfully, from my point of view, until a human has set foot somewhere, you really haven't been there. And that's exploration. That's our DNA, our drive to explore, to go beyond what we know, to learn. And we're constantly learning. And we're going to get there eventually. We are going to have to learn how to live off planet Earth someday, and we're in that toehold in the universe right now to be able to do that, to expand and go beyond our known limits.
And I think that the entire planet lives vicariously through our astronauts. They can live through and get immediate feedback from astronauts on what they're experiencing and what they're seeing, which you can send video back and forth and that kind of thing with robots, but there's nothing like the adaptability, as Bob said, of a human. You look at what we've done on station. The one time when we tore the solar array and we went out there and weaved a repair so we could use it. I mean, you couldn't do that necessarily with a robot in real time, and we did that in real time. And that's the kind of thing that, as we go forward, we're going to take a different approach to training our astronauts. We're going to, train in skills and capabilities. We're going to have to find something for them to do on the long trip to Mars. But ultimately, I just think we need the human presence on site to talk about what we're experiencing.
But having said that, that was pretty darn cool, that Mars Curiosity rover touching down. That was absolutely phenomenal.
One of the things that we know, if we telerobotically ran the rover, Spirit and Opportunity from Mars orbit, we could achieve in 3 weeks everything they've done over the last several years and the distance they've traveled. You can immediately do it, as opposed to going a little bit and stopping and reprogramming and so forth. You can do more in real time. So.
Ed, did you have any comments on that?
Well, I would just, I think Bob said some great things, and I would say, we all can look at great pictures of the Grand Canyon, but until you go and see the Grand Canyon, it doesn't have the same impact as a picture. You can say that you're going to get from point A to point B, and when you have trouble with your car going from point A to point B, it's always good to have some knowledge about how to fix the car on the way. So I think I addressed both of their thoughts about why exploration is important with people. Getting pictures from some place is great. Getting our astronauts that we live vicariously through to come back and tell us what that experience was like, and to tell us what it means to be somewhere else, and then maybe to do science at those locations helps, I think, human progress. I don't see any time in our history in which we did not go exploring with people at some point. And yet you can say we got smarter, now we can send robots, but the human spirit wants to be there, and I think that's why we do human exploration.
Thank you. We have another question from the audience.
Hi, my name is John Wankowitz, and I'm from GOG News and Countdown Today. This is Director Director Cabana. The Vehicle Assembly Building has a lot of work going on, and Atlantis is there. She's just about ready to go to her new home at the Kennedy Space Center Visitor Center. And what are your feelings and views as both a former astronaut and director of Kennedy Space Center?
What am I feeling? Well, you know, it's bittersweet, but I'm feeling great pride. I feel great pride in what this team has accomplished over the last 30 years. I feel great. I was there when we rolled Atlantis out of the OPF. I was there when we closed the hatch for Discovery and Endeavour too. And I'll have to admit, it was a little more poignant with Discovery and Endeavour because I actually got to fly them. I never got to fly Atlantis, but still. And I didn't think it would be as emotional as it was, but it really is. The team that has processed these vehicles, they're family to them, and to be with them for this when it happens, that's special. But again, it's taking great pride. I really believe the facility that we are going to have that opens next year to display this vehicle and tell the story of human spaceflight in the shuttle program, in the space station program, what we have done in the last 30 years, the Hubble Space Telescope, all of that is going to be encased in this new facility. It's going to be phenomenal. And to know that we are going to be able to share that with everybody that comes here, that gives me great pride. That makes me happy. So, yeah, it's kind of sad not to see it going to fly in space, but it really makes me glad to know that we're going to be able to share that with so many millions of people, to be able to tell that story, to let them share in what we have experienced and see not only where we've been, but also the future, where we're going.
Julian, you have a question here.
Julian Leake, America Space. Bob, since Boeing has taken OPF number 3 over, how far along are they from turning it into a shuttle facility to a production facility?
It's a ways off yet. Space Florida has their contractor in there, removing all the shuttle hardware, the metal that was left in there, the platforms and stuff. So they're a ways off before they actually turn that into a production facility. And that's a better question for Space Florida and their team to know exactly what their schedule is. I know roughly what it is, but you could get more specifics from them. So it's a ways off yet.
James.
James in Florida today. Mr. Cabana, it's not inexpensive to go see Atlantis tomorrow, and I assume moving forward, is there any concern about just how accessible Atlantis will be? And I mean, granted, obviously a phenomenal facility that it's going to wind up in and display, but it's not like some of the other sites where it's basically free to go take a look at.
Well, the only one I know that's free is, I believe, the Smithsonian. First off, anybody that ever worked on the shuttle program gets to come see it for free tomorrow. We're having a celebration and a signing ceremony, and I have made it clear that anybody that ever worked on the shuttle, contractor, government, whatever, that's been part of this program here at KSC gets in to see Atlantis tomorrow. Our visitors complex is run without a single taxpayer dollar. No appropriated funds goes into the operation of that visitors complex. And to be able to display that vehicle in a world-class museum facility, it has to be paid for. The Smithsonian runs on taxpayer dollars. Okay, the Kennedy Visitor Center does not. Delaware North is a contractor that operates it for us, but that's all paid for through what our visitors pay to get in to see it. And I think it's a very fine facility, and it's getting better every day.
And it is wonderful that the shuttles will be able to be viewable, but the gentleman in the back actually said that Atlantis was dead, and I'd like to know your thoughts on, you know, the transition from one program to another.
I didn't hear that. No way is spaceflight dead at the Kennedy Space Center. We are alive and well and charging forward into the future, and I think we have an absolutely outstanding future. So I don't think anything's dead around here. Even the things that maybe aren't flying are still alive and well and telling their story.
Yeah, and I would say, you know, none of these vehicles are dead. They all have a new purpose, because when you have 8-year-olds go walk around the shuttle, whether it be at Smithsonian or out in California or here, and you have them with their parents, sometimes that motivates them enough to go get into engineering or go get into teaching or go get into sciences. Just like today, before shuttles were in museums, you went to the Smithsonian and you saw Lindbergh's airplane, or you saw a capsule from a Mercury or an Apollo, and that motivates kids and motivates people to say, well, this is what America can do, first. And second, it motivates kids to say, hey, maybe I can be a part of that in the future. So I think that's the mission for all 3 of these vehicles, including Enterprise. All 4 of these vehicles as they go forward is really to go help the next generation of astronauts and explorers and engineers.
I couldn't agree more, Ed. When I was 5 years old, we took a train trip from Minneapolis to Baltimore, Maryland to see my aunt, my mom's sister, and we went to the Smithsonian. And I'm not kidding. I remember distinctly looking up and seeing the Spirit of St. Louis and the Wright Flyer hanging from the ceiling. And I said, I want to fly. And I mean, Charles Lindbergh became one of my heroes. He grew up in Little Falls, Minnesota. I remember driving through, seeing the statue of him on the way to the family farm. And, you know, that sparked that initial interest in wanting to fly, and it worked out for me.
We have another question here in the audience.
Philip Sloss with NASASpaceflight.com. I think this is for Mr. Cabana. Can you talk about what's going to happen to the other 2 order processing facility bays? And also, there's the other integration cell in the vehicle assembling. What's going to happen with High Bay 1, and I guess High Bay 2 used to be a safe haven. Are there any plans for those at the moment?
We're working an agreement for OPF bays 1 and 2, and hopefully I'll have something soon here that I can share with everybody. But I think folks are going to be happy with how that all works out. High Bay 1 is available for a commercial operator. We've made that known to folks. If somebody would want to move in there and utilize that, it's there. You know, I'm not sure that there's enough of a business to have High Bay 2 available also, but you know, we've been very clear on the facilities that we have available, and working in partnership with the commercial industry and the state, we're moving forward to make some of that happen.
In High Bay 1, for instance, will the shuttle platforms in that High Bay then stay in place for the time being?
I am not going to pay to remove them. I have no use for that. If somebody wanted to come in and modify that for another commercial rocket, it would be at their expense, not the government's expense. We can't afford that. We are making High Bay 3 is going to be our heavy lift High Bay right now, based on the manifest that we see looking forward. 1 bay is plenty for stacking a rocket between launches to meet our commitments. If someday in the future, you know, things are really picking up and we're launching big rockets all the time, then we can invest in High Bay 1 also.
Yeah. Okay, are there any other questions in the audience? James, we'll give you the last one.
So just, of course, with Election Day coming up, had to ask if, you know, last go around saw some pretty big changes for NASA. Ed, you know, probably wouldn't be sitting here in this position if it weren't for that. What are the feelings about if there's a change next week and what the impacts might be and uncertainty that all creates?
Well, first off, I won't speculate anyway on how things turn out. All I can say is that we have worked extremely hard as an agency to come up with an architecture that meets NASA's and our country's need for the future. It supplies a heavy lift platform that allows us to explore. It enables commercial space. It keeps our science community viable with expendable launches through our launch services program. It's doing research, technology and development that furthers our nation's goals. And we are going to continue to do that. That's what we've always done through all administrations, and I see NASA continuing to persevere and lead the way in science and technology and space exploration.
With that, we're starting to run out of our time, so I'll give each of you an opportunity to have some closing remarks.
I think I pretty much said it all, Kendra. Thanks for the opportunity to come here and share with you today. I truly believe we have an outstanding future. We are moving forward at a great pace. Great things are happening, and we're going to continue to do that here on the Space Coast.
Yeah, and I hope you've seen that there is a future in human spaceflight. A lot of folks think that since the shuttle's gone, that human spaceflight's dead, but it is far from dead. We're alive and kicking. We're on orbit every day with the International Space Station, with our international partners. We've got a great coalition. They're interested in exploration, and we're talking with our partners about ways that they might join us in the exploration. So I think the future's bright, and I appreciate you all coming today.
Yeah, absolutely. The future is very bright, and I do think that when industry and business get together with the government, we can do great things. And I think that's where the future lies for low Earth orbit. The whole purpose of what we're doing with Commercial Crew is not just for NASA. It's really to go create a capability for anybody to get to low Earth orbit and go create a way for business to expand within low Earth orbit. You know, the airline industry was started with airmail by the government, and then eventually became an industry thing and a private company thing, and eventually became very commercial. So I think the commercial part of the NASA portfolio is all about being on the threshold of starting that business environment for low Earth orbit and creating a transportation system to really exploit that business capability in low Earth orbit.
Well, with that, we'll conclude today's discussion. Gentlemen, thank you for your time and your thoughts. Thank you for joining us. Have a great day.